This story is based on a real incident. It was a dark, oppressive night. A cold shiver seemed to crawl up the spine of the earth itself, as if it too was aware of the horrifying events that were about to unfold. The air was thick, suffocating, and you couldn't shake the feeling that something evil was waiting just behind the corner. What began as a tale of love and broken promises would soon twist into a nightmarish spiral of betrayal, violence, and murder. It would leave behind more questions than answers, and the fear of what lies in the darkness would haunt anyone who dared to listen. Eliza Samudio had big dreams. She was born in the small, humble town of Foz do Iguaçu, Brazil, on February 22, 1985. Growing up wasn't easy for her. Raised by her father after her mother left when she was an infant, Eliza experienced a childhood filled with turbulence. Her mother, unable to handle the challenges of raising a child in an abusive relationship, left, and Eliza's life became one of loneliness, confusion, and yearning for something more. She had always wanted to escape the ordinary life she had been born into. By the time she was 18, Eliza moved to São Paulo with nothing but a dream and a fierce determination to make it. Her path was far from straightforward. Struggling to make ends meet, Eliza found herself in the grim world of sex work. But she had bigger plans. She wanted to be a model, an ambition that led her through the darkest corners of the industry. While climbing the ranks, she faced more hardship and exploitation than she could have ever imagined. Eventually, she managed to land modeling gigs and even appeared in adult films, but it was never enough to rid her of the feeling that something was always missing. Then, in 2008, everything changed. She met Bruno Fernandes das Dores de Souza, a rising star in Brazil's football world. Bruno was the goalkeeper for the prestigious Flamengo football club, and to the world he was the epitome of success and charm. He had it all: fame, fortune, power, and he was everything Eliza thought she wanted in a man. For a while, it was just a casual fling. Bruno was married at the time, but he promised her he would leave his wife for her. Eliza, blinded by the hope of finally having someone who would choose her, fell for it. But as time passed, things grew complicated. Eliza became pregnant. The dream she thought she had with Bruno quickly shattered. Bruno, denying any responsibility, refused to acknowledge the child as his. He accused Eliza of trying to trap him with a coup of the belly, a term that implied she was only pregnant to secure money from him. For Eliza, the rejection was crushing. She had hoped that this child would be a new beginning for them, a chance for them to build a life together. But the hope quickly turned into betrayal. By the end of 2009, Eliza was no longer just a woman scorned. She was a mother who had been discarded, fighting for both herself and her child. She filed a paternity suit and began demanding child support, knowing she could never rely on Bruno for anything. Bruno, however, made it clear that he would do everything in his power to erase her from his life. But Eliza was no quitter. She wasn't afraid to go to court, to expose the lies, to fight for her son. That October, her nightmare deepened. Eliza went to the police, filing a disturbing report that would set everything in motion. She claimed that Bruno, along with two of his associates, had imprisoned her at his house, forced her to take drugs to induce an abortion, and threatened her life. They had beaten her mercilessly and threatened her with a gun. But the authorities dismissed her cries for help. They brushed off her complaints as the ramblings of a woman scorned. The court, too, failed her. A judge denied her request for protection, suggesting that her situation wasn't serious enough to warrant legal action. Eliza's fight for justice was dismissed as unimportant, as her cries for help echoed unanswered. But her fight was far from over. As she desperately tried to gain custody of her child, her future seemed to grow bleaker by the day. Bruno's denial, the legal system's failure to protect her, and the mounting pressure all drove Eliza deeper into a corner. The weight of betrayal began to feel too much to bear, and yet she kept fighting, desperate, alone, and afraid. Then came February 2010. Eliza gave birth to a son, but she was no closer to getting the recognition or support she needed from Bruno. As the months dragged on, she moved into a friend's house in Rio de Janeiro. Bruno continued to deny the child was his. He wanted nothing to do with her, except when it suited him. In June 2010, Eliza made another attempt to speak to him, to try to settle things for the sake of their son. It was during this attempt that everything would take its final, horrific turn. On June 4, 2010, Bruno called Eliza, inviting her to his farm. In Esmeraldas, Minas Gerais, he promised her they would finally settle everything, that they could put the past behind them. But Eliza, tragically, had no idea what lay ahead. She arrived at the farm still hopeful that there could be some kind of resolution. She had no idea that she had walked into the very mouth of the monster. The last time anyone saw Eliza, she was at the farm with Bruno. He claimed she left on her own accord, abandoning her child and leaving everything behind. But that was a lie, a story meant to cover up the truth. Bruno's story didn't add up. His words were as empty as his promises. The truth was much darker, far more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. Days later, on June 26, 2010, the police began to suspect Bruno's involvement in Eliza's disappearance. But the investigation only took a chilling turn when Bruno's 17-year-old cousin came forward. He claimed that Eliza had been attacked by Bruno and his associates. She had been knocked, unconscious, then transported to a remote location in Minas Gerais. There, at Bruno's request, she was dismembered by drug dealers. Her remains were fed to Rottweiler dogs, and the rest of her body was buried under concrete. The horror didn't stop there. Bruno wasn't alone in his cruelty. His accomplices, including Marcos Aparecido dos Santos, known as Bola, and others, were all involved in the murder. Bruno, once a celebrated athlete, had orchestrated a gruesome, calculated murder that was as shocking as it was senseless. Eliza's body was disposed of like trash, her life stolen by the very people who had once promised her everything. The investigation into her disappearance and death revealed that Eliza's suffering didn't end with her murder. It was as if she had been erased from the world entirely, reduced to a footnote in the lives of those who betrayed her. But her son, the innocent life she had fought for, would be the one to survive. Bruno's lies and cruelty had not only taken a life but shattered a family, leaving behind a legacy of pain and fear. The trial began in November 2012, and the truth came crashing into the public eye. Bruno, along with his accomplices, was finally held accountable. Bruno was sentenced to 22 years in prison. Macaron received 15 years, and Bola was also sentenced to a lengthy prison term. But for all the years they spent in courtrooms and behind bars, no sentence could ever undo the darkness they had unleashed. No verdict could bring Eliza back, nor could it erase the chilling reality of what had been done to her. Bruno's once promising football career was now a distant memory. He was nothing more than a convicted murderer, a man whose name would forever be tied to one of Brazil's most horrifying crimes. Yet, as the court doors closed, the horror didn't end there. The story of Eliza Samudio lingered in the shadows, haunting everyone who had been touched by it. What happened to her was a grim reminder of the violence that could exist in the hearts of those we trust the most. And as the years passed, people would continue to ask, how many more are lost to the darkness, never to be seen again? The end of Eliza's story may have come in the courtroom, but the fear, the mystery, and the chilling truth of what happened to her would never truly fade. It would linger in the darkness forever. If you found this story haunting and thought-provoking, make sure to subscribe to Open Files of True Horror, hit the notification bell, and share with others who need to hear it.